Hello. I want to talk today about Dr. Nathan Cofnas. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Now, he describes himself as a race realist. Now, it's not very clear what exactly this means, but I think it's essentially in continuation with a project which was associated with some of the great scientists, great psychologists, great discoverers of the uh, post-war period. And they would look at the statistics. Maybe they had a inherited bias, I don't know. But they were very clear that, look, uh, black people, darkies, Chinese people, women, they're inferior. And if you looked around the world in 1950, even in 1960, this seemed plausible. And I remember when I was young, there was a book which explained it was written by professors and written for ordinary people, but and it explained that, look, Chinese people are very nice, but you say because of the nature of their language, they are empirical. They can't do abstract thinking. So you can find very good Chinese cooks. You can find very good Chinese painters, but you're not going to find any good Chinese mathematician, any Chinese theoretical physicist. I'm sure imitative, they can imitate. They're like monkeys, but they're incapable of abstract thought. Sorry, Chinese people. No offense. Now, the odd thing, of course, is that in the mid 50s, you had in fact, three Chinese people. One of them was a woman, it's Madame Wu. Madame Wu designed the experiment, but she didn't get a Nobel Prize because she didn't have a penis. She didn't care. She went back later on after the reforms in China. She went back to China and helped them to rise up rapidly. And now, of course, people say the opposite. They say, oh, the Chinese, they have an unfair advantage in mathematics because of the nature of their language. They have an advantage. And of course, in Indians know this very well. The Morgan, he was actually born in South India, because of the Raj. He returned to England as a little baby, so he was not contaminated by the Dravidian darkies. And he actually wrote, he was interested in Master Ramchandra, who was a teacher at the Delhi college. Uh, Now, Ramchandra actually converted to Christianity, but that didn't help him because, the British, after the mutiny, the British, they were against any darky. Don't care if you're a Christian. Okay. Just, they weren't very happy with them. But Ramchandra is interesting because he wasn't using calculus, but he's getting some interesting results. And previously, there'd been interest in the Kerala school of mathematics back in the 1820s. Anyway, De Morgan, it's very interesting what he writes about Ramchandra and what he writes about Asiatics. So, the Indians, you say, they're very good at computation, but they're incapable of abstract thought. They don't know Euclid, and they don't know deductive reasoning and so on. All false, all nonsense. But these ideas were there. And if you come from India or you come from China, you'd have heard them. If you see on your grandfather's bookshelf, there'd be books explaining why Chinese people can never be good at physics and so forth. Oh, Africans! Oh my God! The books about Bantu ontology, Bantu philosophy. You see, it makes the black man. He's very good at. He likes working hard, and he likes living, in his village and dancing and chucking spears. But he's incapable of abstract thought because he doesn't understand the fundamental idea of private property. So basically, some Saharan Africans are great. Hire them, but don't pay them. Don't pay them much because they'll be scratching their woolly heads and saying, "What will I do with the money?" So don't pay them much. These are these. I mean, these are convenient uh, ideas to have. Um, but why did they start to break down even before? Really at the very same time that these ideas were being propounded for economic reasons, diversity is happening by default. And George Bernard Shaw, who of course he was a Fabian socialist, and he knew very well that people like Professor Marshall. Now, Marshall's wife was also an economist. In fact, the first big bestseller they wrote it in collaboration. But Marshall, by the 1890s, he's so much against women coming into university, women, even though his wifey, the women are already there. They're doing very good work, you know. And so George Bernard Shaw, with his tongue in his cheek as usual, he writes the philanderer, and oh my God, the audience would be clutching their pearls and saying, oh, he's depicting men preying upon women, and it's what makes it worse is that there are socialist women and vegetarians and all this. But the tables are turned. It turns out that the women they use their knowledge of mathematics to make a fortune as actually real scientists and stockbrokers or whatever it may be, uh, playing the markets, and they use it men for sex. It's My Fair Lady. What happens at the end of My Fair Lady is that the handsome but brainless upper class chap is married by the flower girl because, yeah, why not? He's good in bed, he's cute, he's good in bed. The children will be handsome. So he turns the tables. So my point is that diversity, equity, inclusivity, they occur through the market process. They occur where there is competition. And, the academy is always about 30, 40 years behind. Because, the problem with the academy is that you have a chap who really isn't bright, but he writes a good essay. And he's happy to remain in academia, repeating the same bloody nonsense for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, unless he's an economist. If you're an economist by Rothbard's law, you specialize in what you're worst at. And so after 5 decades, 6 decades, 7 decades, you're actually stupider than when you started off. Look at Amartya Sen. Look at them all. They're all worthless. So Jason Arday, very sad because, he had a genuine mental developmental issues and so forth. But this is the problem with the twofer. This is called intersectionality. Intersectionality is the notion that if you have a double handicap, then that's really interesting for some reason. It isn't. You've got to separate them out, and you go with the bigger handicap and get compensated for the bigger one, not with the. You don't get a twofer. Two for the price of one. You don't do that. So Cambridge, they hired a twofer. Now, if they just said he's mentally, he's autistic and whatever, then people are going, yeah, that's fantastic because this is a guy who couldn't speak, he couldn't read and write. He's like Helen Keller. Fine, and he can't tell the difference between reality and fantasy. That's good. That's fine because you see, he has the lived experience, and you can find, he's can work with smart people, and maybe they can improve the design of teaching, or they can do stuff which can enable people currently not, they're written off. They can't get a job, but you teach them the right way, and they're earning money. That's good. That's good for the economy. But then, if you're doing it both, if you're saying black plus, blacks are not more autistic or more mentally ill than other people. It's just nonsense. You can't have a twofer. Or if you do have a twofer, then you're in the PR business, in the public relations business. You need Max Clifford there managing the talent. So the talent opens its mouth and talks some bollocks. Immediately, Max Clifford, he's got the Google notification. He's on the phone. And he's not threatening. He's not saying Carter Rock. He's giving you a spin. He's saying, you publish this. You benefit. Everyone's happy. So you always spin the thing in a way. I mean, it's like if talent says, yeah, I used to play football for Tottenham Hotspurs. Max Clifford brings up, he says, no, what he said was, I love football. I love Tottenham Hotspurs. I used to play football, and I used to admire. That's what he meant. He misspoke, and that's fine. And Max Clifford brings up somebody from Tottenham Hotspurs, and he says, we love this guy. He's inspirational. You've got a story. You've got a story. But you need to be proactive. If you're in the PR business, you need PR professionalism. You can't do it in an amateur manner. Now, returning to Nathan Cofnas, I'm sorry, I'm probably mispronouncing his name. Now, he was hired, or his work is supposed to be on the future of liberalism. And of course, liberalism, back from the 1860s, 1870s onwards, it got entangled with eugenics, and eugenics and race science turned out to be utter bollocks. But of course, it's true. It's true that if you didn't have a DEI industry, then in some fields you would not have much representation of Black or Asian people. But that's a lot to do with the economic reward, because the reward in academia is poultry, or poultry, as Jason would say. It's poultry, it's chicken feed. So, you're right. As Nathan Cofnas says, there are over 1,000 people in Britain who are Black and who have IQ over 140. And they're all, and these are guys with educational qualifications. I mean, mathematics and actuarial science and, they're doctors, plenty of doctors, whatever. Hey, hire them by all means. Yeah, but how can you compensate them? Can you compensate them at that level? And yeah, it is possible, but you sort of you go for the older people, because once you're retired, yeah, you can be like the principal of this college or that college. That's fine, that's okay, and they can drum up the money and get the grants and so forth. But obviously, if the DEI industry isn't actually changing outcomes, it's a waste of space. Defund it, get rid of it. So, it's kind of you hoist by your own petard. If you complain against what Nathan is saying, because because if he isn't telling the truth, then the whole DEI industry is a waste of money and should be junked. And, a lot of Black people would say, yeah, definitely do that. Because otherwise, people are going to think I'm a diversity hire. I look at Kamala Harris. Being considered a diversity hire was fatal to her. And I mean, I don't think she did herself any favors with her book, because it's like, I'm a diversity hire, so it's your job to make me look good. That's not going to work. That's not going to fly. It just makes the diversity hire. It's like you're getting somebody second rate. But going back to Cofnas, it's interesting that Lord Macaulay, his argument for permitting Jews or Catholics to get into Parliament, he says, listen, when we vote for a guy, he's our servant. Why should we restrict ourselves to servants only of our own Anglican religion? If this guy is a more talented servant, if he can do a better job serving us, vote for him. Doesn't mean, use him. So the argument for diversity, inclusivity, and all this, it's an economic one. This is the classic liberal position. But as I say, it did develop into in a eugenic manner, and you had people like Gunnar Myrdal and his wife, both of whom received Nobel Prizes. And Myrdal is important because in the 1930s he came to America to do a big study on race. And then he went to India and wrote some worthless shit about India being a soft state. India wasn't a soft state. Indira Gandhi showed India was well hard. Indira Gandhi's emergency succeeded. Ted Heath's emergency was a fiasco. India was hard. It was a hard state, well hard. Britain was a soft state. And, India is a democracy because you can't have a witch hunt of this type, against this Arday, against Cofnas or whoever it might be. Science is science. So, what is the future of liberalism? This is the topic for of Cofnas. I think he basically says that look, there is a notion of naturality, natural law, which is associated uh, with liberalism going back to the 18th century and the Enlightenment. But category theoretical natural transformations, that is naturality, that is non-arbitrariness, it's actually rather far to seek. Why? Because even if there is an objective function, now, if there's an objective function, bottom line is, yeah, you can get categoricity under certain conditions. There'll be a natural transformation between functors. Uh, yeah, we know that. The problem is when you have something to maximize or to minimize, in other words, you have an objective function, what is being maximized or minimized is arbitrary. That's where the arbitrary nature, the arbitrary element enters. But where does that come from? And the answer is it comes from the fitness landscape. Now, Cofnas is basically saying that let's add something to the definition of evolution by natural selection. Let's add a no teleology uh, provision. Teleology means that something has a purpose. In Aristotelian physics, things have a purpose. In and ad hoc manner, we say that the purpose of such and such evolutionary adaptation was so that we could get smarter and we could dominate a planet, something like that. It's kind of it's kind of a misapplication of backward induction. But all that's fine. You can write about that, and probably at the moment, ordinary people feel that all this DEI stuff has gone too far because you're making monkeys out of us. Essentially, it's look at this black monkey. Aren't we sweet and nice? Aren't we such beautiful white people because we're stroking the black monkey? Oh man, we're not monkeys. And what you just done to Jason is disgusting because that Baron Cohen, he's a professor of psychology. He's not a psychiatrist, but he had said that there's a suicide risk. It was on the Twitter thing, and where there's a suicide risk, then and actually Jason's brothers works in mental health. His mother had also worked in mental health. And there, it's quite easy to rally around and to say, we've got a job. There's a suicide risk, so let's take turns keeping company with Jason, and don't reinforce the fantasy. If somebody is thinking that everyone's out to get me, and you ultimately kill yourself because you think if they, they'll hurt my family if they can't. They want to kill me. They're coming at me with knives, but they're invisible. They don't show up on the CCTV. They sent me a huge big pig's head. But that too was an invisible pig's head. I mean, if these guys are invisible and so you've got to say to a guy who is in that paranoid kind of ideation, who has that ideation, you have to say, nah, mate, screw all that. You know, uh, concentrate on putting on weight, looking good, and when you make your state go on TV or whatever, you say it's all lies. Plagiarism is a social construct of the white man. Put the black man down. That's it. You just say you're ignorant, you're racist, and just say, it's easy. That's your job. Never apologize and deny nothing. I mean, look at Trump. Look at what he does from day to day. Right? One day during COVID, he was saying, "Drink bleach, that'll cure you." And then he's going, "No, I was joking. Can't you guys tell when I was joking?" Come on. This is Trump's world. It's the world of fake news. And it's only people who actually think that there are guys who are invisible and who are persecuting them, and that if I don't kill myself, I'll probably harm my children. That's the thing over here. So you really have to say, no, no, mate, all this is a game. Look at Trump. He talks bollocks. It's not real. It's all fake news. Anyway, I think I've said enough now. Thank you.